The gathering dark. The sky above Chicago turned an unnatural purple as Commander Elijah West watched the alien ships materialize. They didn't so much fly as tear through reality itself, massive obsidian structures that seemed to absorb both light and hope. The Navy pilot had been visiting his sister when the world changed forever. "What the hell are those?" whispered Marcus Chan, Elijah's brother-in-law, as they stood on the apartment rooftop. Elijah's military training kicked in as he assessed the situation. "Nothing good. Call Zoe and tell her to grab only essentials. We need to move." That was 4 days ago. 4 days of watching humanity's defenses crumble like sandcastles before an impossible tide. The creatures called themselves the Shroud, at least according to the single transmission they had deigned to send before the slaughter began. Their message was simple: your world is claimed. Resistance ensures only pain. Now Elijah crouched behind the burned-out shell of a public bus, guiding a group of 17 survivors through the ruins of what had once been downtown Chicago. The Shroud had focused their initial attacks on military installations and government centers, but their second wave targeted infrastructure and population centers with ruthless efficiency. "Commander, they're sweeping west," whispered Lieutenant Riyama Patel, an Air Force communications specialist who had been stranded when O'Hare became a smoking crater. Her uniform was torn and dirty, but her eyes remained sharp and focused. "Their harvester units are 2 miles out and closing." Elijah nodded grimly. The harvesters were massive machines that moved on 6 articulated legs, each the size of a small building. They didn't just destroy, they consumed, breaking down everything from concrete to metal to organic matter, processing the raw materials for purposes unknown. "Everyone stay quiet," Elijah instructed the group. "We move in 30 seconds. He scanned the faces before him: his sister Zoe and her husband Marcus, the elderly couple they'd found hiding in a subway station, the kindergarten teacher who'd somehow managed to save 3 of her students, and others gathered along the way. Ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary nightmare. "Follow the route exactly as planned," he continued. "No noise, no lights. If we get separated, remember the rendezvous point." They moved through the shattered city like ghosts, using the growing darkness as cover. The once magnificent skyline was now a jagged silhouette against the unnatural purple haze that had become the permanent state of the sky since the invasion. 3 blocks later, they ducked into the remains of a university research building. Elijah had chosen it specifically. The underground labs might offer both shelter and useful resources. "We'll rest here," he announced, 2 hours no more. As the civilians settled in the relative safety of the building's basement, Elijah pulled Riyama aside. "Any word from command, any broadcasts at all?" She shook her head. "Nothing since yesterday. Last transmission said Edwards Air Force Base was gone. Pentagon too. They're systematically eliminating our command structure." A new voice joined their conversation. "It's not just elimination, it's harvesting." Elijah turned to see a woman in her 40s with short-cropped salt and pepper hair. Dr. Olivia Reyes had joined their group the previous day after they found her hiding in a collapsed university building. Her expertise in quantum physics had initially seemed useless in their fight for survival, but her analytical mind had already proven valuable. "What do you mean?" Elijah asked. "I've been watching their pattern," she explained, spreading hand-drawn diagrams on a dusty table. "They're not just destroying at random. They're extracting specific elements, rare earth metals, certain isotopes, even particular biological compounds. It's methodical." "To what end?" Riyama asked. "I'm not sure yet," Olivia admitted, "but understanding their priorities might help us predict their movements." A sudden crash from above silenced their conversation. Elijah motioned for everyone to stay down as he and Marcus crept toward the stairs. The distinctive mechanical clicking of Shroud drones echoed through the building. Unlike their massive harvesters, the drones were roughly human-sized, moving on 4 spider-like appendages with unsettling grace. Each was equipped with sensors that could detect heat, motion, and even the electrical impulses of a beating heart. Elijah held his breath as one of the drones passed directly overhead, its sensors sweeping methodically. After an agonizing minute, the clicking receded as the drone moved to another section of the building. "They're getting more thorough," Marcus whispered. "Last week they were just bombing, now they're hunting." "They're making sure nothing valuable escapes their harvesters," Elijah replied. When they returned to the basement, a middle-aged man named Terrence Griffin was speaking with Dr. Reyes. Before the invasion, Terrence had been a telecommunications engineer. The Rockies, Terrence was saying. There's a facility there, Talon Mountain. Hardened bunker built during the Cold War, later converted to a research center. If anywhere survived, it would be there. That's over 1,000 miles, Riama pointed out. And we need to move now, Elijah added. This place won't stay safe for long. The journey west was a nightmare of careful navigation and narrow escapes. They traveled by night, scavenging abandoned vehicles when they could, always staying away from major routes that the Shroud patrolled. They lost 3 people crossing the Mississippi, a drone attack that came without warning, silent and devastating. 2 weeks after leaving Chicago, their reduced group came upon an unexpected stroke of luck. A military convoy that had escaped the initial attacks. Major Dominic Rivera commanded 37 soldiers with actual combat experience, and more importantly, a collection of vehicles including 2 modified Humvees and a communications truck. We're heading for Talon Mountain, Rivera explained when Elijah's group joined them. We've been gathering survivors along the way, their strength in numbers. With the military escort, their journey became marginally safer but no less desperate. The Shroud's presence grew stronger as they moved west, suggesting something important to the aliens lay in that direction. One evening, as they camped in the shadow of a collapsed highway overpass, Olivia approached Elijah with excitement in her eyes. I've been studying the fragments we've collected, she said, referring to the small pieces of Shroud technology they'd managed to salvage from destroyed drones. And I think I've found something. She showed him a small component that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Their technology operates on quantum entanglement principles. That's how they coordinate so perfectly despite having no visible communication networks. What does that mean for us? Elijah asked. The rising storm. 4 months had passed since Commander Elijah West and his group had reached the relative safety of Talon Mountain. What had once been a government research facility now served as humanity's most organized resistance hub, housing over 300 survivors. Deep within the mountain's core, Dr. Olivia Reyes hunched over a workbench, surrounded by a jumble of salvaged technology, both human and alien. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, testament to endless nights of research. You need to rest, said Director Naomi Chen, entering the lab with 2 steaming mugs. Olivia barely looked up as she accepted the coffee. The Shroud beacon is nearly complete. Our latest reconnaissance shows their accelerating construction. Naomi sighed, setting her mug down on a stack of diagrams. How long? 2 weeks, maybe less. The implications hung heavily in the air. 4 months of research had confirmed Olivia's original theory. The beacon would open a stable quantum tunnel, allowing the main Shroud fleet to arrive instantly. Earth's resistance would be crushed entirely. Commander West is back, Naomi said, changing the subject. His team recovered more components from the downed Hunter drone. That finally broke Olivia's concentration. Did they get the entanglement core? See for yourself, came Elijah's voice from the doorway. Despite the harsh months, he stood tall, though his face had grown leaner, his eyes harder. Lieutenant Riama Patel stood at his side, cradling a metal box. Riama placed the box on Olivia's workbench with reverent care. Inside nestled a strange crystalline structure that pulsed with an ethereal blue light. It's intact, Olivia breathed, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. This changes everything. How soon can you integrate it with the prototype? Naomi asked. 24 hours, but Olivia hesitated. We'll need to test it, and testing means getting closer to a Shroud communication node. Elijah nodded grimly. I'll assemble a team. In the command center, Major Rivera studied the holographic map displaying known Shroud positions around the Rocky Mountains. Red markers indicated harvester units, while smaller blue dots represented drone patrols. They're building something here too, he said, pointing to a location 50 miles northwest of their position. Smaller than the beacon, but definitely important. We've observed increased traffic and resource deliveries. Elijah leaned closer. A relay station maybe, something to amplify the beacon's signal. Whatever it is, it's lightly defended compared to their main sites, added Terrence Griffin, now the facility's communications expert. Might be our best chance to test Dr. Ray's device. The planning session continued late into the night. Intelligence gathered by scout teams was analyzed, patrol patterns documented, and terrain advantages identified. Their target, a relatively small shroud outpost would allow them to test Olivia's quantum interference device while minimizing risk. By morning, Elijah had selected his team: himself, Riama for communications, Marcus for his engineering skills, and two of Rivera's best soldiers, Corporal Jin Takeda and Sergeant Delia Washington. Olivia insisted on joining them. Her expertise would be crucial if adjustments to the device became necessary in the field. "This is strictly reconnaissance and testing," Elijah reminded them during the final briefing. "We confirm the device works, then we withdraw. No heroics, no extended engagement. We need this technology for the main objective." The main objective, which they'd codenamed Operation Thunderclap, was already taking shape. If the quantum interference device worked as Olivia predicted, they would use it against the beacon itself, not just disrupting but hijacking the Shroud's own technology. 3 days later, Elijah's team departed Talon Mountain under cover of darkness. They traveled in an electric vehicle salvaged and modified to run silently, its heat signature masked by technology developed from studying Shroud stealth systems. They reached the observation point by dawn, a ridge overlooking the alien outpost. Below them stood a structure unlike anything human architects would design: asymmetrical black spires connected by pulsing energy conduits, the whole complex seeming to bend reality around it. "There's the communication node," Olivia whispered, pointing to a crystalline formation at the center of the complex. "We need to get within half a kilometer for the device to work effectively." Elijah studied the terrain through binoculars. Patrol drones on a 15-minute rotation, two harvesters on the far side, will approach through the western ravine. Their sensors have trouble with the mineral deposits there. They descended carefully, using natural cover whenever possible. At the half-kilometer mark, they established a position in an abandoned mining tunnel. "Power levels nominal," Marcus reported as they activated the device. "Quantum field stable." Olivia's fingers flew over the controls, making minute adjustments. "I'm detecting their frequency baseline. Now we'll introduce our disruptive pattern." For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then the lights in the Shroud outpost flickered. "It's working," Olivia whispered, excitement bleeding through her professional demeanor. "Their quantum field is destabilizing." Suddenly, alarms blared from the alien structure. Drone patrols changed course, converging on the outpost rather than continuing their perimeter sweep. "Something's wrong," Riama said, monitoring their communication intercepts. "They're not just experiencing disruption there." She paused, listening intently. "They're receiving contradictory commands." Olivia's eyes widened. "The entanglement effect is stronger than I anticipated. We're not just jamming them, we're accidentally feeding false instructions into their network." As they watched, two Shroud drones collided in midair, their coordination completely disrupted. Below them, the harvesters stopped their methodical work, their massive limbs frozen in place. "Can you control it?" Elijah asked. "Direct the false commands." "Theoretically, yes," Olivia replied, her fingers already making adjustments. "If I can isolate the command protocols." A massive explosion rocked the outpost as one of the energy conduits ruptured. Chaos spread through the alien facility, drones firing on each other, systems overloading. "We need to leave," Sergeant Washington urged. "They'll figure out where the interference is coming from." Elijah nodded. "Pack it up, we've got what we came for." As they retreated, Marcus turned to Olivia. "I thought this was just a test. What happened?" "We didn't just jam their communications," she explained, her voice breathless with realization. "We created a feedback loop in their quantum network. The Shroud don't just use quantum entanglement for communication, they use it for everything. Navigation, weapons, even their basic functions. Which means they're more vulnerable than we thought," Elijah concluded. The return to Talon Mountain sparked a frenzy of activity. What had begun as a test had revealed a critical weakness in Shroud technology. In the workshop, teams worked around the clock to build larger versions of Olivia's device. "If a portable unit could cause that much disruption," Director Chen said during the planning session, "imagine what a full-sized version could do to their beacon." Major Rivera nodded. "Operation Thunderclap needs to happen before the beacon is completed, 2 weeks max." Elijah studied the latest reconnaissance photos. "We'll need 3 teams. Alpha takes the north approach, Bravo comes in from the east, Charlie from below. There are old mining tunnels that might get us close enough. Each team places a quantum disruptor at these coordinates," Olivia added, marking 3 points forming a triangle around the massive beacon. Once activated, I can synchronize them from our command position here. Terrence Griffin raised a concern. The Shroud will detect the interference immediately. They'll throw everything they have at those teams. That's why we need a diversion, Elijah replied. Something big enough to draw their attention elsewhere. The plan developed over the next week. Every available resource was devoted to its execution. Survivors from other resistance cells were contacted using their limited secure communications. Vehicle modifications were completed. Weapons were distributed and fighters trained. The night before the operation, Elijah found himself on the facility's observation deck, staring at the purple-tinged sky. The unnatural color had become permanent, a visual reminder of the alien presence choking their world. "Penny for your thoughts, Commander," came Olivia's voice as she joined him. "Just wondering if we're already too late," he admitted. "What if they've already called reinforcements? What if there are more coming regardless of the beacon?" She leaned against the railing beside him. "Then we fight them too, one battle at a time." "You sound surprisingly optimistic for a physicist." Olivia smiled faintly. "I've spent my career studying quantum mechanics. The universe is filled with impossible things becoming possible. Why should humanity's survival be any different?" Operation Thunderclap began at dawn. The diversion came first, a strategic attack on a Shroud harvesting operation 20 miles from the beacon. Major Rivera led this assault personally, using their limited heavy weapons to maximum effect. As expected, Shroud forces redirected to counter the threat-thinning defenses around the beacon. Elijah's Alpha team moved in from the north, navigating treacherous terrain to avoid detection. Through his binoculars, he could see the beacon itself, a massive structure stretching almost a mile into the sky, its surface rippling with energy patterns that hurt the human eye to observe. "Status check," he whispered into his comm. "Bravo team in position," came Riamaz's response. "Charlie team approaching final coordinates," Marcus reported, his voice distorted by the depth of the tunnels he navigated. The moment of truth approached. Each team needed to place their device, activate it, and withdraw before the Shroud realized what was happening. Timing was everything. Elijah's team reached their position first, concealing the quantum disruptor among the ruins of what had once been a small observatory. The irony wasn't lost on him, a place once used to gaze at stars now helping to repel invaders from beyond them. "Alpha device planted and ready," he reported. "Bravo device ready," came Riamaz's confirmation moments later. There was a tense pause before Marcus's voice crackled through. "Charlie device in position," where static interrupted his transmission. "Detected drones incoming." "Activate now," Elijah ordered. "All teams activate and withdraw." They triggered their devices simultaneously. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the air itself seemed to shiver as if reality was being bent. The beacon's energy pattern changed, its smooth ripples becoming chaotic. From his observation point, Olivia's voice came through clearly. "Synchronization complete. I'm establishing control parameters now." What happened next exceeded even their most optimistic projections. The quantum feedback loop didn't just disrupt the beacon, it reversed its function entirely. Instead of opening a stable path for the Shroud fleet, it created a destructive wave that swept through their quantum network. Shroud drones fell from the sky, harvesters collapsed mid-stride. The smaller communication outposts exploded in cascading failures, and most dramatically the beacon itself began to fold inward as if consuming itself. "It's working," Olivia's voice was incredulous. "The quantum reversal is propagating through their entire network." The retreat was chaotic but successful. All three teams made it back to their rendezvous points, though Charlie team had suffered casualties evading Shroud drones. From a safe distance, they watched as the aliens' most significant Earth installation tore itself apart. 3 months later, humanity had reclaimed significant territory. The quantum disruption technology had spread to resistance cells worldwide, allowing coordinated attacks on Shroud installations. The aliens, cut off from reinforcements and with their network in disarray, found themselves on the defensive for the first time. In what had once been Denver, Commander Elijah West stood on a hilltop overlooking a recovered city sector. Beside him, Dr. Olivia Reyes studied readings from a handheld scanner. "No Shroud quantum signatures detected," she reported. "This area is clear." Behind them, reconstruction crews were already at work. Human resilience manifested in the most practical ways, rebuilding, replanting, reclaiming. They thought we'd just roll over and die, Elijah remarked, watching a group of children helping to plant a community garden. They underestimated us, Olivia agreed. A common mistake for technically superior forces. They forget that adaptation is humanity's evolutionary superpower. A communication drone approached, bearing the insignia of the newly formed United Earth Defense. Riyama Patel had risen to head their communications division, coordinating resistance efforts globally. Director Chen is requesting your presence at Talon Mountain, the young operator informed them. We've detected unusual activity in orbit. The shroud ships are leaving. Elijah and Olivia exchanged surprised glances. Retreating, Elijah asked. Unknown, sir, but satellite imagery confirms they're breaking orbit in significant numbers. As they prepared to return to headquarters, Elijah took one last look at the recovering city. The sky above showed patches of natural blue breaking through the purple haze for the first time in nearly a year. They came expecting to find an easy conquest, he said quietly. Instead, they found humanity. And humanity, Olivia added with a fierce smile, has only just begun to fight back. In bases around the world, engineers were already adapting shroud technology for human use. The quantum principles that had nearly destroyed Earth would now help rebuild it, and eventually, perhaps, take humanity to the stars on its own terms. The world had thought they'd fallen, but humanity had roared back like a storm, and the universe would never underestimate them again.